Right guys, welcome back to the tutorial, and in this section we're going to be building and styling this team section, which has these cool little hover effects, and then we're also going to be building this contact us section, which has a couple of inputs and a text area and also a button. And if we click on these inputs, you can see a nice blue border that appears because of the focus state, and it also has a nice CSS box shadow which looks pretty cool. And we're also going to be creating these diagonal cuts in the images, so for the contact us section and the about us section. So if we go back to the other website, the really cool thing about using utility classes is that the about us section and the market section are really similar to the team section and the contact us section. So all we really need to do is just copy these two sections here and then paste them, and then pretty much just change the writing. So we'll have a team section here, and instead of ID for teams, market, sorry, we'll have team, and then just change the title. So team, and then instead of markets, we want to change this to team because we don't want it to have the same styling as these three items here. So a really cool emit trick is like a multi-selector. So we've got three classes of markets here, and if we use Control D once, twice, three times, you can see it selects all three, and then we can actually just change these all at the same time. So that's a cool little emit trick. So that's Control D. And then all we really need to do from here is just change some of the content. So instead of icons, there'll be images. So IMG, and then Chris Green's the first one. And we'll just put in Chris Green, and he is the CEO. Oh. And then I'm just going to copy this 3 more times, and then just, oh, it's not. And then the second one is going to be Rose Ward, who is the president. And then we're going to have Jack Smith, who is the CFO. Oh, sorry, finance. And then all we just need to do is just change the images here. So it's not Chris for this one is Rose, and then this one is Jack. You can see we still need to style the images and apply that hover effect, but what I'm going to do first is just create the contact us section. So instead of the first photo here, oh sorry, first we need to change this section here. So the ID for this is contact, and then we'll also change it for the comment. And then instead of the first image or this image, we're going to have the contact image. And then instead of all this content here, we're going to create a form. So we're going to use the form tag, and I'm going to give this a class of form container, and it's not going to have any action here because it's not going anywhere. But inside the form container, we're going to have a h2, which is going to say contact us, and then underneath this we're going to have our three form items. So it's going to be a div called form items, and the first two are going to have inputs. So it's going to be a type of text, and then after the text it's going to be an ID of name. So this is going to be for the name input, and then we're going to use the placeholder. What the placeholder does is any value we put in here will appear inside the input. So I'll show you guys what I mean. So if I put name inside here as a value, you'll see it should appear on the inside of the input, and there it is. So it looks pretty good. And I'm just going to duplicate this 2 more times. So this one is going to be for the type of email, and the reason you put type of email is that we can only put emails inside this input now, so it's a pretty cool effect. You can't really put numbers or anything like that. So the ID is going to be email, and the placeholder of course is going to be email. And then instead of an input for the third box, it's going to be a text area. So we put a text area in here. Don't need the rows or the cols, just need a placeholder. I'm going to say message for that one, and the name is going to be for message, and we're also going to give this an ID of message. And the last thing we want to put in here is just an anchor tag, which is going to be a button for enter, and it's going to have that secondary background utilities class styling. So what we want to put in here is just going to be enter, and what I also want to do is make sure the text, I'm going to put an inline style inside the anchor tag here, and make sure the text is center aligned, so text align center. And then what I also want to do before we style this is, if we look in the finished website, you can see the images on the other side. Now what we could do is just put this form inside column 1 and then the image inside column 2, but if we use Flexbox, we can actually just use one property value pair to switch it around. So I'll show you guys what I mean. So first we need to put a class in here, so we're going to pick the row because this houses both the columns, so we're going to put row reverse, and then go inside the utilities class, and I'm going to go underneath row here and say row reverse, and then all we need to do is just change the flex direction. So you've got row and row reverse, so in this case we're going to use row reverse, and what that should do is just reverse the rows. So column 1 is now essentially column 2, and column 2 is essentially column 1. So there's another really cool feature of Flexbox. So the next thing we need to do now is just do the styling. So we're going to do the styling for the team section because we need to change the size of the images and also give them that effect when we go over them. They scale up in size. So we'll go inside the style bit here, or the CSS style sheet, and we're just going to say for this bit it's going to be for team section. And the first thing you want to do is just make sure the width of the team section is 100% of the browser. And then the images here obviously are in completely different scale, so we want to change the images and all make them the same size. So I'm going to say width of about 16 rem and then height of about 30 rem. And what we also want to do is just give them a more of a rounded edge, so border radius about 50%. And then the next thing we want to do is just make the H2 and the H1 bigger. So it's team, a class of team. I'm going to say H2, and we're going to say font size of this to be, let's say 3 rem. That looks pretty good. And then we also want to do the same for the paragraphs, but instead of 3 rem, let's say 2.5 rem to be a bit smaller. And it looks pretty good. And now we just need to add the effect of when we hover over these, they scale up in size. So to do that, we need to grab the team section. I'm going to go underneath team image actually and say team, and then add a transition in here so it gives it a nice effect of all, and we're going to say 0.3 seconds and ease, and then apply this to a hover effect. So team hover pseudo class, and we want to transform this, so when we hover over this it transforms in scale, and we say 1.1 because if it was just 1 it wouldn't scale. So we'll go over to the browser and you see it has that nice hover effect when we hover over each of these items. It looks pretty good. So the next bit we want to style now is the contact us section, or the form container. So what I'm going to do is just put a comment in here and say contact, and then just scroll down a bit so you guys can see. So I just want to make sure the contact section is the full width of the container, or the browser in this case. And then first we want to style the form container, and I want to display this as flex so we can place this wherever we like. Now the items you'll see now are behaving as they should because we have 5 different items in here, so we want them to stack on top of each other. So I'm going to say column, and then I just want the width of this to be 80%, and then let's just make the margin on either side of this auto so it's more central. Looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to add a bit of padding here just to give it a bit of breathing room. Which looks pretty good. And now we want to style the contact us, or the H2. So I'm just going to grab that with form container H2, and I want the font size of this to be, let's say 5 rem. And now we want to style the inputs, so we need to grab the inputs. So we're going to say form container and input, and I want the width of these to be 100% of their container, so the form container. And then let's add a bit of margin between them so they're not squished up next to each other. So 1 rem on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right. And let's also give them a bit of height because they look a bit thin for me. So let's say 6 rem. And then also want to make the border radius a bit more rounded, so I'm going to say 5 rem. And let's also make the font size here of about 2.5 rem, also the placeholder. And then what I also want to do is actually remove the border, so we're going to say none. So you can't really see it right now, so the thing we need to do is go inside the utilities class, and where we see column 1 and 2, we want the background of this to be a bit darker, so we're going to say triple E. So now it's a lot easier to see the inputs, and there's also quite a distinct line now of between each section, so it looks pretty good. So the next thing we want to do now is go back into the style sheet, and we want to style the text area. So grab the form container and say text area, and I want the height of this to be about 10 rem, and let's also make sure the width of this is 100% of the form container, and I don't want a border on this either. And again, let's give this a border radius of about 0.5 rem. And let's give the text or the placeholder a bigger font size, so let's say 2 rem, or maybe a bit bigger actually, 2.5 rem. And let's give this a bit more font weight, so let's say 400. Looks pretty good. And then just to push it off a little bit from the edge of the text area, I'm just going to add some padding, so let's say 0.3 rem. See what that looks like. Looks pretty good. Now what we also want to do is add that effect of when we click on these, you see by default the focus state will be a black border, but we can affect this, so we can make it that blue primary color and also give it a CSS box shadow. So the first thing we want to do is grab the inputs, so just going to grab this section here, paste it in here, and put a focus class. And what I want is the border color to be that primary color and the outline to be that primary color. And let's also add a box shadow, so on the vertical and horizontal we don't want any effects or any shadow, we just want a blur, so that's the third value here. And then we want it to be that primary color, and then this is going to be the exact same styling as the text area. So let's grab the text area, and when we click on it, it should give us that effect, which looks pretty good. Now the last thing we want to do is, if we look in the original website, the color of the placeholder is blue, so normally you wouldn't be able to just put color of this primary color. We need to grab the placeholder class or pseudo class, and we're just going to say placeholder, and we want the color to be that primary color. And there you go. Now the input and the text area have that nice blue color, and it all looks pretty good. Alright guys, so the last bit we're going to be building out is the little cut in each of the images. So if we go back to the original finished website, you can see this got this nice little diagonal cut, which is, I think, is a pretty cool little effect. So the way we're going to create that is going to be using the clip path property. So the first thing we need to do is go inside the About Us section, and inside the image we're going to say, we're just going to create a class called clip1, and then we're going to do the same in the Contact Us section. So we'll go inside the image and we'll say for this one clip class clip2, and I'm going to style these inside the utilities class, and I'm going to put them underneath the section title. So we're just going to say clip path. Now I won't go too deep into this property. I will be bringing out a video focused primarily on the clip path property in the coming weeks. So if you guys are interested, please subscribe and tune in for that one. But I will just give a general overview. So the clip path property has 4 geometric values you can set. So you've got the ellipse, the circle, the inset, and the polygon. Now for this example, we're going to be using the polygon. So I'm just going to go underneath this comment here, and I'm going to say clip1, which is going to be for this image here. So we're going to use the clip path property, and as I mentioned, you've got the polygon, inset, ellipse, or circle. So we're going to be using the polygon. Now the clip path property works really similar to the margin and padding property. So you start from the top, then the right, bottom, and then the left. And the polygon value takes up multiple parameters, and in this case we've got 4 because we've got an image, a square image, so the first property, or the first parameter, second parameter, third parameter, fourth parameter. And each of these parameters consist of 2 values, so you've got the x coordinate and the y coordinate. Now this can seem a little bit confusing, but trust me guys, with a bit of practice this can be easily mastered. Now the x parameter in this case is the distance from the left side, and the y is from the top. So we're going to put the first 2 values here, which is going to be for the top left. So we're going to say 0 from the left and 0 from the top, and I'm just going to put a comma there. Now the next parameter is going to be from the top right over here. So this parameter is going to be 100% from the left and 0% from the top. So we're going to say 100% for the first value, so from the left, and then 0% from the top, and put a comma here. Now the third parameter is where the cut is going to be. So I want this to show 100% from the top and 90% from the left. So we're going to say 90% first from the left, and then 100% from the top, and put a comma here. Now to create the cut we need to put in the fourth parameter, which is just going to be 0% from the left and then 100% from the right, 100% from the top. And there's a little cut from my image, so you can see here now it's 90% from the left, so it creates this cool little diagonal line. Now we need to do the same for the contact us image, so what I'm going to do is pretty much just duplicate this, and then I'm going to say for clip 2 is the class, so we'll go down here, and you can see it's given us the exact same cut as the one above, but what we want to do from here is want it to be 100% from the left, so it gives us the whole square. And then what we want to do is affect the top left corner here, so we want this to be 10% from the left, so I'm just going to put 10% in here. So the image now starts 10% from the left of the original position, and that's how we can use the clip path polygon. And that's pretty much it for this video guys. So we've created pretty much the main section now. So we've got the header, the welcome section, the market section with the effects, the about us section, team section with the effects, and the contact section. So all that's left to do is going to be the footer here, which has these nice little hover effects, and also the socials, and then we're going to be making this all responsive. So I'll see you guys in the next video.